Hello, everyone, and welcome to Creating a New World, the show about the 12 Visions world, a world of wealth, health, peace, love, and freedom that you can help create. My name is Bill Hunsaker. I'm your host. This is episode number 37, and I'd like to welcome my co host, Bob McCaffrey. Welcome to the show, Bob.
Oh, thank you, Bill, and welcome everybody. I'm happy to be here.
Um, I'd like to start out with the first section of the show, which is the 12 Visions world, and like to start with a reading of the 12 Visions. Do you have that handy, Bob? If you don't, I can just walk back and grab my Visions book and read from there.
The 12 visions I do have available, and I'll be reading it out of our beautiful coloring book.
Mm-hmm.
That work?
Yes.
Okay. The 12 visions, according to the 12 visions coloring book, which was produced by Highness Integrations. Vision 1, become the person you were meant to be. Vision 2, live the life you were meant to live. Vision 3, feel happy. Vision 4, be young forever. Vision 5, get the job of your dreams. Vision 6, start your own company. Vision 7, find true love. Vision 8, look great and feel great forever. Vision 9, become a genius. Vision 10, surround yourself with geniuses. Vision 11, become rich. And Vision 12, enjoy perfect physical and mental health. That's the 12 visions. Mark Hamilton's 12 visions, according to the Neothene coloring book, the Highness Integrations coloring book.
Thank you, Bob. Okay, the topic we're going to discuss today is sports as entertainment. As we know, sports has become really big business, especially in the U.S., but definitely elsewhere in the world too. Basically, in the 12 Visions world, I think particularly violent sports will become less popular. Sports such as football and things like lacrosse, where there's a lot of definite physical contact. I don't think they'll become completely, ignored, but they'll be less popular, and other sports that are have less violence, shall we say, and physical contact, such as baseball and golf and and things like all the sports that are included in the Olympics, like gymnastics and ice skating, and I do think that sports that feature individual achievement will probably be more popular, and also there will be less the kind of coercive practices as far as you know. Um, how how players are paid, and how the because there's a lot of things in the industry that are negative, and people will as they become more and more aware of how coercion and intimidation are done, that they'll become less interested in, and will tend to drift away from sports that have a lot of that sort of thing, and also um, you know but a lot of other aspects will remain the same. I mean, we do have, for the most part, players, freely contract with the teams they play for, and they, and viewers. But I really think that a lot of the costs involved in producing sports will go down as with everything else. So it'll be a lot easier to be an in-person spectator rather than a spectator on TV or over the internet as it is now, because one of the biggest problems with sports today is ticket prices have gone through the roof because of increasing costs of maintaining facilities and higher salaries for players. And that's really pushed a lot of people, especially lower income people, into being television or internet viewers of sporting events.
Yeah.
And that will, along, just like virtually everything else in the 12 Visions world, all of those costs will go down. Maintenance of facilities will go down. And also, it's possible that because of changes in people's perspective, that actually salaries of players will go down somewhat, and won't, because people won't, I don't think will idol worship players as much as they do now, which is what makes it, you know, I don't know though. That's one area where it may be the market still, the open market, which is pretty much what we have now. So their player salaries may remain the same, and it's not necessarily a bad thing. It's only bad in as much as how it impacts ticket prices and the ability of people across the board to be in-person spectators for sporting events.
Yeah, another sport that may continue on is an individual sport, tennis.
Mm-hmm.
And that'll probably become more popular, and that is a game that almost anyone can play at any age.
Mm-hmm.
People will want to get involved more. They'll have more freedom, so they'll have more time to be able to get out there and do something like that.
Yep, people will be able to pursue their interests rather than scratching for a living.
Yes.
And working their entire life just to survive, as a lot of people do in our world. I think also golf will become more popular as a sport that people participate in across the board, because both of those virtually anybody could do. But just like everything else, you can have fun doing it, but you don't necessarily have to be the most skilled player to enjoy either tennis or golf.
Right. I agree with that.
And so basically, I think a lot of the negative aspects of sports in today's world will go away, and also things like because there is some government interference especially in the major sports leagues, and also there are some practices that even today, there are it's much better in baseball. Teams virtually owned players, and they had no way to market their skills in the open market, because they were, if they wanted to play professional sports, they had to sign a contract that said they would play for that team and not play for any other team. Right. And this came out of the early days of baseball and also ice hockey, where a lot of professional players would play for one team, and then some other team would show up and offer them more money, and then they'd walk away keeping the money they were paid to play for the first team. So I can see that, but it was, in a way, it was an overreaction to the point where players had very little freedom, and that's lessened now with contracts that provide free agency and the ability after a period of time to market their skills to other teams.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that will continue in the 12 Visions world. But again, the main idea of sports as entertainment, it won't change a great deal. People will still want to watch sports, just like they'll still want to watch movies and television shows and everything else. It's just, I think the main change will be the content. It'll be less violent, less coercive, and more cooperative, and and that's what people will want to see, rather than in today's world where they want to see violence and and you know that's why I think that football will become less popular, and other contact sports will become less popular, and and sports that require cooperation and individual achievement will become more popular, I believe.
Yeah. And one of the things, like with NASCAR, I mean, they've taken so many steps and done so many things to try and improve the safety of the sport.
Hmm.
I mean, you still have accidents occur, in the course of a race, because things happen, machinery breaks and whatever. But the safety things that they put into these cars, I mean, they can have a real bad accident, then yet you see the driver who gets up and walks away as if nothing happened. So it's great that they've improved the safety for the individuals in that area.
And that will continue and advance more rapidly along with the rest of
Right.
technology.
Yeah.
And that's the kind of world that I want to see, where the safety of individuals is more important than anything else.
Yeah.
More important than money, more important than fame, more important than any of those things.
Right.
And so I mean, I don't know that there's very many ways to make, for instance, football more safe without fundamentally changing the nature of the game.
Yeah. You'd have to go to something like touch football.
Right, exactly.
That's not too exciting for a lot of people. So.
Mm-hmm. I mean, it's violence is inherently part of the game.
Yeah, and unfortunately, the violence in football and some of those contact sports, it does damage that unfortunately affects the individual for the rest of their lives.
Yes, it does.
That's the sad part about it. And then you sometimes sit back wonder, is that money that they're making worth the possibility of their lives being ruined forever, and, or them being hindered by a handicap forever, sometimes it just doesn't make sense.
Yeah, and I also think that sports where violence is the basic premise of the sport, such as boxing or mixed martial arts, will become less popular also.
Mm-hmm.
Because people will be like, why do I want to watch somebody hurting someone else?
Right. Yeah.
And that's why I'm not interested in those sports, and but still, and I think any sport involving firearms will become less popular also, other than something that's inherently, the skill of marksmanship.
Yeah. I mean, that's an area, something that I think people will always be interested in just improving your skills, like skeet shooting and that.
Mm-hmm.
Here you're not killing anything. You're shooting at a plastic clay bird that's shot up in the air, and you're testing your own personal skills. And
Yep.
I had a lot of enjoyment. I haven't done skeet shooting that much, but for the short period of time that I did do it, I wound up with a very sore arm, but I enjoyed it,
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and Olympic sports such as the biathlon, which incorporates, cross-country skiing and target shooting, I think those kind of things will still be popular.
Yeah.
So, basically overall, I think sports, violence will become less popular, and like I said, cooperation and individual achievement will become more popular in sports.
Yeah.
Okay, unless you have any more comments to add, Bob, I think we'll move on.
No, I don't have anything else.
Okay. So we'll move on to the section I like to call Where's the Force? And today's topic, give me just a second. Today's topic will be socializing. Okay, Bob, where's the force?
Socializing. You got me there. You kind of caught me off guard.
Yep.
I guess in some areas in work, there are areas that you have to socialize with people that you maybe not don't want to socialize with,
Hmm.
and so the force is there somewhat. Uh,
Okay. Yeah. For me, there are a few aspects. One of them, of course, is uh, uh, the uh, the unfortunate fact that some people um, consider social events as a way to try to dominate another person, and specifically, I'm thinking of dating, where people think, oh, just because this person has agreed to, go on a date with me, then there's some implied consent to something else later that the other person may not want to be involved with at that point in time. And some people take that to, and that's anytime someone forces someone else to do something they don't want to do, that's initiatory force
right,
inherently. It's in the phrase "force them to do it."
right,
um, and so, this comes down to I mean, to me, initiatory force, the other side is consent. I mean, if someone is consenting and not, not under duress, but consenting free of their own free will, then it's not initiatory force. But if they don't consent, and and I saw something today on Facebook where they said anything but yes means no, and that's it. There is no implied consent. There is no, silence gives assent. The person has to actually give consent in order for it to be, uh, in order for it to be not, for it not to be initiatory force. Uh, and in a social situation, that applies just like every other aspect of life. That it can't be, you can't assume that the other person is giving consent. You have to make sure that the other person is giving consent to any action you take toward them.
right, right,
And so that's basically the force in socializing with people is people assuming consent where consent doesn't exist, and and because of that, you know, basically forcing the other person into a situation that they don't want to be in.
yeah,
And the other aspect is what I call freedom of association. I mean, no one should have to associate with anyone they don't want to. And there are a lot of situations in the world today where, unfortunately, people do have to associate with people they don't want to, as you mentioned.
yeah,
Um, I mean, anyone should be able to say, I no longer want to associate with you, and then once they say that, the other person should cease all interactions with them. Unfortunately, in the world we're in today, we have people who think that that if they want someone in their life, that it's their right to push them to be in their life, whether that person has agreed to it or not.
yeah,
And that's one of the things that's going to change in the 12 Visions world, is that people will have freedom of association, will be able to decide who they wish to associate with and who they don't want to associate with.
mhm,
um, and in order for for people to associate with each other, both persons must consent to that association. It can't be one-sided.
yeah. And then in a work environment, for example, the fact that you're still there, that's saying that you give an agreement in the eyes of the manufacturing owners or
Hmm.
the boss's opinion. The fact that you're still there is, oh, you consented to it.
Yes, yes.
So
As long as you continue to come to that place of work, you consent to the social interactions that are required for the job you've agreed to do.
right, and that sometimes makes it very difficult for you to do your job.
Hmm.
You know, and it puts you in a very difficult spot.
All right. Thank you, Bob. We'll go ahead and move on to the next section, which is the creating the 12 Visions world, where we talk about the 12 Visions movement and the 12 Visions Party, which is organizing the 12 Visions movement. And we'll continue our discussion of the national platform. But first, we'll have a reading of the Prime Law, and I'll go ahead and do that. Let's see, I know it's available in the platform here, if I can find
Right on
it.
the first page.
Oh, it's right on the first page?
Right. Page 2.
There it is. Okay. The Prime Law, the Fundamental of Protection. Preamble. The purpose of human life is to prosper and live happily. The function of government is to provide the conditions that let individuals fulfill that purpose. The Prime Law guarantees those conditions by forbidding the use of initiatory force, fraud, or coercion by any person or group against any individual property or contract. Article 1. No person, group of persons, or government shall initiate force, threat of force, or fraud against any individual's self, property, or contract. Article 2. Force is morally and legally justified only for protection from those who violate Article 1. Article 3. No exceptions shall exist for Articles 1 and 2. The Prime Law is the fundamental natural law of protection that directs all decisions and actions of the 12 Visions Party. The Prime Law may not be amended. Okay, now I'll find my way back to where we are in the platform.
Page 39.
Yep. Yeah, the previous version of Adobe Reader used to automatically bookmark the page you stopped at, but this version doesn't do that, which is a bit of a pain. Okay, there we go. And I'll go ahead and read this section. We're finishing up the split run portion of the platform, and this is the last part. It's titled Seeds of Socrates. In the 4th century BC, the city-state Athens was governed by a representative democracy. The year was 399 BC at the famous trial of Socrates. Perhaps our planet's greatest benefactor was sentenced to death by Athens' justice system. Historic accounts reveal that Socrates could have averted the politically motivated death sentence, but Socrates refused. Even when given the opportunity to escape from jail prior to drinking the poisonous hemlock, Socrates refused. Athens' justice system convicted and sentenced him to death, and Athens was going to get exactly that. At 70 years old, Socrates sacrificed his life to leave the world his greatest political message. Socrates' greatest political message. Socrates' greatest political message was, society and its citizens must live by its rule of law, as did Socrates at the cost of his own life. The law, however, had better be flawless law, or society will lose its greatest benefactors and values, as Athens lost Socrates. Socrates planted the seeds of Hamilton America, of the 12 Visions world. Society must be governed by rule of law, flawless law. 2,400 years ago, Socrates decided his beautiful message was worth dying for. Socrates' sacrifice has not been lost. Today, 2,400 years after the trial of Socrates, the 12 Visions Party will manifest his greatest political message. Live under rule of law, flawless law. That flawless law, of course, is the Prime Law, which takes us to the next section titled Part 2, Lift Us from the Suppressed Class, Prime Law, Rescuing America, Setting Free the Great Technological Revolution, Era of Super Technologies and Soaring Buying Power. So you want to go ahead and read the first section of this titled The Premise, Bob?
Okay, the premise. The premise is simple. Man is imperfect. Man is flawed. Man is vulnerable to incorrect opinions, selfish agendas, destructive temptations, misguided behaviors, dishonest corruption, even manipulative evil. Excuse me.
No
By
problem.
removing all imperfections, by removing man from making the political and legal decisions, a perfect power-reactor explosion of wealth, health, and peace will overwhelm society sooner than later. The problem in all political and legal systems, even known to man, is they are ultimately controlled by flaw-filled men. The American political system, for instance, whether liberal left or conservative right, in both cases is controlled by man, by flaw-filled man. Civilization will take unprecedented leap forward to removing imperfections. By removing man and his endless opinions and agendas from creating, interpreting, and executing law, the method of remove the method to remove man is the prime law. The rapid consequences, as shown throughout Part 2, is millionaire-like prosperity for all the people, including the poor.
Thank you, Bob. This this is this is the basic idea here, and to see the what is meant by flaw-filled man, and here the word man is used to represent all individuals of the human race, male or female, um, not just to represent male individuals, because everyone is filled with flaws. Everyone has ideas and ambitions and um, has all of these things um, that that keep them from being objective and compassionate toward other people. And so therefore, interpreting the law can't be left to men. I mean, all we have to do is look at the presidential race, the current presidential race, to see how flaw-filled men, people are in general. I prefer the term people to man, or because it's gender neutral. But how far people, how flaw-filled people are, people who have been who have had their perspective and opinions um, all influenced by things that they learned as children, including religion and prejudice and other things, and you can see them putting those perspectives on display as they try to persuade people to elect them president of the United States.
And unfortunately, people today, most people anyway, have a tendency to be very lazy. Instead of going out there and doing what they have to do for themselves to benefit themselves, they would much rather sit back and listen to these people that are promising, oh, they're going to give them this, they're going to do this for them, they're going to do that for them, and instead of going out and doing their own thing, they just sit back and say, okay, he's going to do this for me, let him do it. And
Mm-hmm.
he doesn't realize, and they don't realize, that all these people are really doing is putting out their ideas that are going to encourage you to continue to vote for them and support them in whatever they do, and basically to keep them in power so that they have the control over all these people. And people are just, unfortunately, ignorant of that, and it's sad.
Yep. But it's part of, I mean, most people have gone through public schools, unfortunately, and part of going through public schools is it indoctrinates you into believing that the government is there to protect you and help you. And they believe that, without questioning it, because you do believe things that you were taught as a child before you learned to, you know, to discriminate and, well, not, I hate the word discriminate, to to think logically and skeptically about the world. And also public schools discourage people from thinking logically and skeptically. We're taught in school to you know, to respect outside authorities, not our own authority.
Right.
That you know, that others know more than we do. And at that, when you're in school, they do. But as you become an adult and learn a lot about the world, they don't know that much more than you do, even though they try to pretend that they do know more than you do. But and that's the unfortunate thing. And I used to be that way. I used to, you know, I considered myself non-political, considered myself neutral, and every election I would listen to all the candidates and then vote for the one who was closest to my, you know, what I thought should be. And it took me years to realize that they were just saying what I wanted to hear, and then when they were elected, they would do something totally different. That they would, you know, and I've learned more and more that the way politics is run in the U.S., people end up basically owing the people that helped them get elected, either through political contributions or through other influence, and then when they get into office, they tend to do what those people want them to do rather than what they promised or what is best for all the people in the country. Okay, we'll move on. Let me take a quick look at this. How is this set up? All right. I'll go ahead and read the next section, and I think we'll finish off with this section here. It's titled Removing Rule of Man for Universal Wealth, Including the Poor. Quote, the prime law locks down the fundamental of law and government. The prime law removes man and his endless opinions and agendas and illusions. I can clearly see how ordinary people like me will become very wealthy, unquote. And that's a quote from a Neothink Society member. Once we recognize and remove from politics and law the inherent problem of man, flaw-filled creatures easily influenced by power and money, then we will quickly rise into a wealthy world. Even the poor will rise, as we will see in Part 2. Ruling class power must be taken out of the hands of man. Freedom and prosperity throughout history suffered when man created, interpreted, and executed the law. On the other hand, freedom and prosperity throughout history soared when man was removed from the political and bureaucratic controls. Our own country soared when we mostly removed the rule of man, i.e., removed a monarchy with our U.S. Constitution. To complete the evolution into universal prosperity, the powers of the legislative, judicial, and executive branches must be taken away from the opinions and agendas of flaw-filled man and put into a flawless prime law. If you take 100 well-educated men and women and ask them their thoughts on important issues of law and politics, they will bombard you with many different opinions and agendas, as exemplified by the U.S. Senate. Moreover, once in positions of political power, surrounded by the trappings of irresistible power and wealth, their answers become directed for their own benefits, for their own political clout. Man is easily influenced, man is an easily influenced, easily corrupted creature. Therefore, the laws that govern man, i.e., protect man, must be free of man. The only way to be free of man is to reduce law to its essence. Once at the fundamental nature of something, there is no going deeper. All the opinions, agendas, illusions, dishonesties, and corruption, all man's faults, no longer matter. The fundamental nature stands unchanged, unscathed, unconditional, uncorrupted. plain for all to forever see and know, which is the nature of the prime law. The 12 Visions, a Mark Hamilton publication, demonstrates why protection of citizens is the only legitimate purpose of government and is the essence of law. The fundamental of protection is captured in the prime law, which supersedes all law. The prime law removes man, including all the smart law school graduates, from the decision-making process of law. Law leaps to another level altogether, for the first time completely free of man. The prime law determines the creation or lack of creation of new laws, not man with his endless opinions and agendas and faults. The fundamental of protection, the prime law, determines the interpretation of laws, not man with his endless egos, selfish ambitions, and many human flaws. The prime law determines the execution and enforcement of laws, not man who is drawn to intoxicating power, rampant dishonesties, and a capacity for evil. When the prime law removes man from creating, interpreting, and executing laws, something amazing happens. The heavy and corrupt ruling class of man comes off society. In that new freedom, as you will learn throughout this platform, society and technology soar. A great technological revolution takes off and causes our buying power to multiply 100-fold, maybe 1,000-fold, making everyone rich, including the poor. We already saw the forerunner with the uninhibited computer revolution, in which buying power multiplied 1,000-fold in a few years. Let us now introduce a new grassroots political party with the sole objective to remove man from creating, interpreting, and executing law in order to make all people wealthy, including the poor. And there's a footnote at this point. It says, a point of confusion among a few readers has been expressed as follows, quote, you say the prime law will remove man from creating, interpreting, and executing law, but even with the prime law, man would still create, interpret, and execute law, unquote. Let me alleviate that confusion. The prime law is an amendment to the U.S. Constitution would take complete control of governing and remove man from being in control of governing. The prime law amendment would prevent man from creating, interpreting, or executing law based on any decision beyond the prime law, bound by the prime law, the fundamental of protection. Our government will go into another dimension never known on earth, a pure protection-only government with no initiatory force in the governing body. Man will be prohibited from agenda law, agenda regulations, agenda justice that always requires initiatory force. Rule of man will be over. Yes, man will create, interpret, and execute law within the prime law's parameters of self-defense, protection from initiatory force, threat of force, fraud, or coercion. Yet man, our politicians and bureaucrats included, will be prohibited from initiatory force, from ruling via agendas. Therefore, there can be no rule of man, just rule of flawless law, the prime law. Indeed, the prime law governs, not rule of man. Man simply carries out the prime law of protection as it applies to society. That complete control over man and complete removal of rule of man is why I use the expression, remove man from governing, for the prime law takes over governing. Man must still create, interpret, and execute law, but will do so as dictated by the prime law, void of his own wishes and desires, void of initiatory force necessary for rule of man. Rule of man can never again create, interpret, and execute the law. For without initiatory force, there is no more rule. There is just man bound by the prime law to initiatory force-free protection only, the only proper purpose of government. The prime law will finally deliver a purely free civilization free of the rule of man and will be the unbridled launch of our human potential. Then the final section of this part, the name of that new political party that removes man from governing, removes the corporate ruling class, is the 12 Visions Party. Let us next see how the TVP will do that. Okay, there's a lot to digest here.
Mhm.
The main thing here, and as I said, I prefer the term persons or people rather than man, because that's become a loaded word today. Uh, that when people interpret the law, they apply all of their preconceived ideas, their prejudices, their whatever they've accepted as reality that may not be reality, and also they apply their dishonesty and in some cases evil to their interpretation of the law. Whereas under the prime law, they would be prohibited from doing that. But in addition to that, once people understand the benefits of having the prime law rule and govern us rather than than the individual perspectives of people, they will all accept that and they will see the benefits. That's the main thing, and they will, anyone who tries to go beyond the prime law will be first of all, people won't listen to them, and people will ignore what they say and not do what they try to tell them to do. That's the basic idea.
Mm-hmm.
And also, this this can't work unless the majority of people accept it and want it. I mean, if a majority of people still think that, still want to put the accept individual people or small groups of people as their authority rather than a law that can't be changed and prevents anyone from using initiatory force and coercion on them, then we'll still have what we have today. And that's the main purpose of this show, is to show people the benefits of making the prime law part of our world.
And unfortunately, for a lot of people, having to govern themselves and take care of themselves scares them, and that they're afraid of it. So rather than to go into an area that they're not sure of and they're afraid of, they would just rather have somebody to be their leader and say, "Okay, tell me what to do," and it's sad.
Yeah, unfortunately, the way people raise their children tells them that initially that they shouldn't trust themselves, but should trust others, such as their parents, teachers, police officers, and political leaders.
Yeah.
That they shouldn't trust, they shouldn't live based on their own judgment, but seek the judgment of others, seek and the idea of the prime law basically says that you are your highest authority. You are the person who makes decisions, not others.
Right.
And therefore, you're 100% responsible for those decisions and your life. Darn it. You're in charge.
Yes. And a lot of people don't realize that. And one thing that just come that I saw this morning on a commercial, they're showing an individual crossing the street, and he's observing the lights and not taking in looking to see what's going on. He just said, "Okay, traffic light says I can go, so I can go, and it's okay." Meanwhile, he gets halfway across the street and the car runs him over because the individual coming from the side street did not see the red light and did not see the man, and then just ran over him like he wasn't even there. And had this individual taken the initiative to look himself and check it out for himself, he would still be alive today. And
Hmm.
unfortunately, people make a lot of mistakes like that that cost them very dearly.
Yeah, because they're taught from the time they're children to accept others
Hmm.
as the authority, others as, you know, where they look to make decisions rather than looking to themselves, and they don't question that as adults.
Right.
In some cases, they don't even think about it or realize that they're looking to others, um, for, you know,
Guidance. Right.
for guidance, that they're only, you know, and that's the unfortunate thing, is that most people are taught that they shouldn't rely on themselves, that they should rely on others, you know, for uh, you know, decisions, how to, what to do, when to do it, et cetera, et cetera.
Yeah.
And they most of them don't even realize it. They think they are directing their life when they're really only accepting those around them as direction.
Right.
Um, so, you know, this is it. This, I mean, just adding another, you know, another bunch of words to the Constitution isn't going to change anything. That's the truth. The
Right.
truth. It has. People have to understand it, accept it, and live it
And
in
take
order.
responsibility.
Right. In order for this to work. I mean, and Mark is not not saying that all it requires is a piece of paper,
Right.
or is a bunch of words added to the Constitution. I mean, there's more to it. There's, you know, there's an understanding of what it means, and an understanding of its positive effect on everyone. Um, and that's the part that we have to do, you know, on this show and elsewhere when we talk to people about the 12 Visions world and the prime law,
Hmm.
is to, you know, because I've had many people say, "Oh, that's, yeah, I've seen that before. It doesn't mean anything," and it doesn't if people don't accept it. It's just words on a piece of paper. I
That's
mean,
right.
that's the way ideas work. I mean, if you just see an idea and you reject it, then, you know. But if you see an idea and understand it and see its positive benefits, then you will want to live your life in accordance with that idea.
Yeah. I have a little placard here on my desk that kind of reminds me every day. Uh, I'm responsible,
Hmm.
and and it's true. I mean, we go along and say, "Oh, this so and so did this, so and so did that,"
Hmm.
but ultimately, we allowed it to happen. We have to take responsibility for it. If we accept something that we don't agree with, then we're creating our own problems.
Hmm. Yeah, and also people that say, you know, you made me mad, you made me cry, you made me sad.
Can't happen.
They
Not
don't
allowed.
understand that they have a choice of
Right.
how to react to a situation,
Hmm.
and they choose to be sad, to cry, to be angry,
Yes.
and
We
they can
let them.
also, yeah, they can also choose to react differently.
Yes. And it's all up to them.
Yep. And people that, you know, who are in a bad situation, you know, who think that others caused that situation, and, you know, don't understand or see that if you accept full responsibility for your life and your situation, that you can change it.
Hmm.
Whereas if you think that you're not responsible, that others, that you don't have control over your life, then how can you change it if you don't think you have control over it?
Right.
That others control what you do, what you think, what you say, then, you know, how can you change that for the better for you?
Yeah.
And that's the whole idea here. For me, this is not about, you know, forcing people to do this.
Hmm.
I mean, that's, you know, that's the opposite of what this means. This
Right.
is this is, you know, here's how you can live your life and be in total control of it and be completely responsible for it, and not allow others to control you and what you do, and not allow others to determine your situation. You know.
And that's a start for people. They have to realize that they are responsible for what happened, and taking that responsibility then says, okay, if I'm responsible and I created it, then I have the power to change it.
Hmm. And
And
that's
unfortunately, people today don't realize that,
that's the essence of prosperity.
right?
That's how you live a prosperous and happy life, is take control of what you're doing and accept full responsibility for it and not try to blame others.
Right.
I mean, others, people only have as much influence over your decisions and what happens in your life as you allow them to have. You know, I mean, there are basic things that you can never control, such as, weather, uh, you know, things like that. And also you can't control the decisions and actions of other people. Those are things you can't control, but what you can control is your own decisions and actions and reactions to other people.
Right.
So you can live your life constantly being angry and upset and worried, or you can live your life saying, that doesn't that only affects me a little, and I can make decisions and take actions to counteract, how that affects me. And I mean, it sounds like we've drifted way far away from where we read, but this is the essence of it. This, the idea, I mean, I want to dispel the myth that just because we have words here on a piece of paper and we want to add those words to the Constitution, that's going to instantly change the world and everything's going to be fine. No, it requires everyone's active understanding and acceptance of this idea, voluntary acceptance, not feeling that they've been forced to accept this, but understanding it and accepting it by their own choice. And
Right.
that's the important thing. This isn't a matter of us coming along and saying, oh, here's the prime law, you have to do this, we're going to make you do this. No.
Yeah.
The
And
idea.
people basically have to take the initiative and say, okay, I want to get involved. I want to find out what's going on. I want to see what's really happening. So I'm going to get out there and I'm going to look to see what the possibilities are. And I recommend to a lot of people that they take a look at the 12 Visions Party National Committee .net or website, and
Mm-hmm.
see what the possibilities are with the 12 Visions Party, and take action. If you see something you like, get in touch with somebody in the national committee, or get in touch with somebody in the 12 Visions Party in your state, and get out there and do something about the things that you see happening every day that you don't like and you'd like to see changed. And that's the word that we're trying to put out with this show is, come and get involved, and let's make a better life for all of us.
And that basically transitions us to the next section of the show, which is how you can help create the 12 Visions world. And you stated it quite clearly and quite well, Bob.
Thank you.
And the basic thing is, if you understand what we're talking about and you like it, then if you choose to, you can help create it. That's the whole point. But you can also choose to stand by and let others do it if that's what you want to do. And we're not telling you have to become involved and that you have to be, that you have to help us do this. No, we're just saying, that if you want to, we're here. We would gladly accept your help and assistance in creating this world that we want to live in, and we hope you want to live in too. And also, that's what this show is about, helping people understand what the 12 Visions world is, and what the 12 Visions movement, how it's going to create that world. And we're going to continue that in the next episode of this show, with this, because that's where this is going, as it said there. Let's next see how the TVP will do that, and we're gonna be doing that in the next episode. Another way you can help is to help us produce this show. You can go to patreon.com / creating a new world, and you can donate up $1 or more an episode to help us produce this show, because a lot of the things we're doing are free, but there are a lot of other things that cost money, and we would greatly appreciate your help, and it would help us to be able to do more and better shows in the future. And also, anything you want to do to become, the most basic thing you can do to help is to talk to other people, both about the 12 Visions world and about this show, and we would greatly appreciate that. So I want to go ahead and wrap this up. I want to thank you, Bob, for joining me on the show, and I always appreciate your perspective and opinions. Thank you for coming on the show.
I'm happy to be here, and thank you for having me here.
And I want to thank everyone who watches this show, and would greatly welcome feedback. If you have any questions or comments, please send them to cnwshow@gmail.com. You can see previous episodes at www.createanewworld.blogspot.com. You can like us on Facebook. Just search for CNW Show on Facebook. You can join our Google Plus community. Just search for CNW Show on Google Plus in the Google Plus communities. You can support the show by telling your family and friends about it. You can also support the show by going to www.patreon.com/creatinganewworld and pledging $1 or more an episode. All opinions expressed on this show are the sole responsibility of the individual participants and do not represent the Neothink Society, the 12 Visions Party, or author Mark Hamilton. Creating a New World is a production of Integrated Values, LLC. I wish everyone wealth, health, peace, love, and freedom.